All right, I'm wondering if anyone has made it here successfully to my last recast here. Oh my god, I'm so sorry that this has been such a rocky road. Pretty embarrassed, but so it goes. Just trying to keep you all here with me. So I see we've got some people. Maybe drop a comment here in the chat if you. Hey, all right, Julie Hook is back. All right. So for those of you who have already made it back, I'm going to answer a couple more questions, while any others that got booted off again and coming back can catch up. So, question from Julie says, can you talk a little about time of year and growing conditions for grafting onto potted rootstocks? Absolutely. That's a great question. As I alluded to before, timing is an important thing to keep an eye on with respect to grafting. So when we're talking about this like springtime grafting, you want to have dormant scion wood. You want to have um, living rootstock, things that aren't dormant but that are coming to life but haven't yet fully budded out. So your scion wood should look dormant, should look tight and well stored like this. Your rootstock, however, I'll pull one out of the box here that looks like you might be getting an idea. If you can see that, there are little leaves coming out here. So the reason why I'm pointing this out is because you can graft onto potted rootstocks all the way until they have developed their leaflets about, I don't know, about half of their full size, about half of the full leaf size that they will develop. And for in sort of more plain calendar terms, I typically define grafting season as like the first week of April through the last week of May. So you've got 8 good weeks of grafting where you can, just at any point on potted rootstocks, as is, just the same as with any kind of rootstock that's out in the field or on any established trees, you can graft between April and the end of May, and you should be just fine. On a tree physiological level, what you want to be looking for is for the bark to be slipping. And so what that looks like on something like rootstock is that when you take, this is a cut off piece of our rootstock from before, when you take a knife and you just sort of like make a slight incision into it, you should be able to just sort of peel away with your fingers the outer bark easily. So it should be relatively easy. It should just come off in little strips like that. And so what I've got left in my hand is just the outer bark, and you're left with like the exposed cambium layer. That is what needs to be happening within the tree, the rootstock, in order for you to successfully graft onto it. And so that usually happens in places like Massachusetts, New York State, all of New England, most of the eastern seaboard. It's like when winter is over and spring is just starting to get off the ground. So question from Brianne Walker. Oh, not a question, but a comment. Technology giveth, technology taketh away. How right you are. I am so sorry for any of you guys who were like, damn, this guy's got to get his shit together. This is a rocky road, and I super appreciate you guys bearing with it. I am like, mostly spend my time in the trees. I don't do a whole lot of stuff on my computer, as is probably obvious because I like never update my blog, and I like never do anything online other than like Instagram post every once in a while. So thank you. I'm super sorry that this has been like crazy. I don't really know what went wrong anytime, but I guess people got booted off and it froze up or something. Nick K, can we talk a little about scion collection and pruning wild trees for scion production, especially with regards to older feral trees? Absolutely. Thank you for asking this, Nick. That is a really, really good question. Most of the trees that I catalog and that I deal with in sort of the life that you see on Instagram of me dealing with some of these wild apple trees is one of the characteristics that you notice about them is that they typically don't grow a lot of scion wood that looks like this. And so you're dead on that pruning them is stimulative. It'll like get them moving, it'll get them going. So the first thing to remember with that is that it's a long process and that you've got to just keep at it for like a few years. The response of any tree, not just apple tree, but really like just about any tree, to a grafting cut. The response to a pruning cut is to continue growing. Is to that is itself a stimulative action for a tree. Tree just wants to grow, and so it's going to continue growing even if you prune a branch off it, whether that's a big branch or whether it's a small branch like this. So if you were to say like take a handsaw and cut off a big branch on an old like kind of sluggish wild apple tree, even if that branch is dead, even if there's no living tissue in it, that is stimulative for the tree. And so even if it takes a little time, like 3-4 years, consistent pruning off of dead, older, sluggish growth is going to rejuvenate the tree and enliven it to produce that younger growth. There is a post on my Instagram feed that you can check out for specific reference to this at Gnarly Pippins on Instagram. I think this was probably in, early March, I want to say, maybe mid-March. But I was just sharing a couple pictures that were taken over the course of scion harvesting season, which for me lasts from like January all the way until middle March usually. And there's a shot, if you scroll through, it's like a series of photos. If you scroll through, you'll see a picture that I took on the mother tree of this variety that I call Old Fertile. And it's a tree that I've been pruning for like 4 or 5 years now, and it's just starting to like tick over and start to produce a lot of really good scion wood. This one is another example. The variety of scion that I've been grafting on this 3-part webcast is called Boisfort Bitter. That's from Hadley, Mass. That's my town here in Massachusetts. And it's another tree where it has these, this is like, I don't mean to toot my own horn, but this is like a really good looking scion wood, and it's not me tooting my own horn. Like it's the tree's work. It's not my work, but it's really good to just give the tree gentle pruning every year, and it will wake up. I wouldn't recommend doing a ton of big cuts on a first year on a feral apple tree because they're not used to that kind of management. Doing a little bit at a time is probably the best thing you can do. So if you have more questions about that, I can talk about that all day. But I don't see any more questions in the feed right now. One thing that I do want to talk about just for a minute before I get ready to sort of sign off in a few minutes is you all, my loyal devotees, are going to get an apple tree in the mail. And I'm going to graft those all for you this afternoon. You are my people. I want to get you exactly the trees that you want. The variety, you have a choice in. The rootstock, unfortunately, you don't. I've got one variety of rootstock that I'm grafting right now. As I said before, it's called Budagovsky 118. That's a large size tree, so it's going to grow to be really big. If you let it get that big, you can prune it to keep it small if you'd like. But it's going to be a nice, big, sturdy tree that will be very cold hardy for those of you who are in the northern part of the country. It'll grow, a really strong, vigorous tree, and it'll do well for you. So I'm going to do my best to get those to you in good shape in one piece. Pack them well, and you should see a tracking number go out this week for that. But I want to get from you the scion variety that you would like to have growing on your new apple tree. So I've got a few options. Obviously, I'm sold out of a couple of varieties of scion wood that were listed on the website earlier this fall or whatever, winter. But at this point, I'm just gonna show a couple varieties. I'll give you like a quick elevator speech on each one. And in the comment section or in the email, whatever works better for you. I'm going to write this stuff down on my spreadsheet just so I can keep a good list of it. Um, just tell me what variety you would like to have, and um, we will get it packed up to you. So, oh, I see there's a question here. Do you ever use the Z graft for wood of similar caliber? What graft do you use most often? From Ian McGregor. That's a great question. I I do use the Z graft for wood of similar caliper. Um, it's hard to say which one I use most often. I think the Z graft forms the strongest union of any of the grafts that I taught you today. It's almost an arbitrary point because any well done graft union, because you guys are all going to be pros now. It should grow, and it shouldn't have any like, after it gets off, like after the first year of growing, it shouldn't have any issues with brittleness or anything. But in that first year, I think that the graft union of the Z cut works the best. It's definitely the strongest. Um, but I think I probably do the whip and tongue graft the most often, just because it's quicker. And like all things in agriculture and farming, like efficiency is key. If you can do something quickly and you can do a lot of it efficiently, that's the one to go with. If I'm like working for a client, like a private, someone who's like, hey, will you graft my trees for me? And, you know, trying to do really extra crisp work or whatever and not concerned with time, then yeah, I might do more of the Z graft. But in general, I think that the it's just so much easier to just bang out like quick whip and tongue grafts once you get the hang of that. That I probably use that most often. But this is a deeply personal thing. Like everyone is going to find their own strategy, their own style. You're all going to get your own cuts, and you're going to be pros at it, and you'll know exactly which cut works the best for you, even if you wouldn't like invent a new cut or something that hasn't been thought of yet. So um, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that I get some cool grafting stories from you all in the future. So again, as I said, I'm gonna just talk about a couple varieties of scionwood that I'm gonna offer up to you guys for your tree that you're gonna get. So the first one, Ed's Winter. This is one of the varieties that I have listed in my catalog. This is a variety that I would consider to be a cider variety, first and foremost, although is very edible, very delicious eating apple, and it stores impeccably well. I think that this is probably the apple for you if you're into ice cider. If any of you guys are makers, if any of you are curious in like traditional method ice cider, where you're pressing frozen fruit rather than pressing juice and then freezing the juice and concentrating stuff that way, more of the modern method. Ed's Winter is a cool apple variety because it's a really heavily cropping tree. It crops every year that I've witnessed it. It's very disease resistant in our like microclimate, or not microclimate, but in our regional climate in New England and the Northeast. It does very well up here, and it just the fruit hangs on. It's persistent. It's a large crab apple, so like 2 inches, something like that size. Deep red. In fact, I can show you a photo of it because I have the. This is something only you guys are going to see. This is my upcoming book that will be announced in the pre-order pretty soon. But let's see if you can see that. It looks like kind of shitty, but anyway, Ed's Winter is a large crabapple, heavily cropping tree, and the fruit just hangs on into like late winter. So it's a really great choice for any of you who like, ice cider making, anything with like freeze concentration you want to play around with is amazing. And additionally, if you harvest the fruit when it's just ripe regularly, you don't let it freeze, you can store this without refrigeration for a long time. It'll stay good in a bushel box in your kitchen for like, a few months. at least, and its flavor just improves with time because it becomes less tannic. The tannins soften out, and the sweetness really prevails after a few months. So that's Ed's Winter. You can just drop a comment in the live chat if you want to tell me what variety you want that way. You can send me an email. If I don't hear from you either way, I'm just going to surprise you. Chase, when will the book be available? So what I just showed you, that was a proof copy. We're going to have the actual printing done of this book probably a week and a half from now. And yeah, so it'll be available then. Next one, we've got Foot Race. Foot Race is a bitter sharp variety from Maine. Late September, large fruit, four or so inches. Really, really great variety in my book. I love Foot Race. A lot of people find it too high acid. Is a very, very high acid apple. Great for baking as well as for like blending within cider. That's Foot Race. Next up, I've got a culinary variety. It's called Shoes. Hat and Shoes crab is from Coleraine, Massachusetts, and it's the most annually bearing variety. I call it Hat and Shoes because it's got these like little pieces of russet on the stem well and on the opposite end on the calyx end, and so it looks like it's wearing like a khaki pair of pants or like a khaki shoes and like a corduroy hat or something. I was much younger when I thought of that name, so it's kind of stupid. But hat and shoes, it's something that I would consider to be a eating variety as well as most properly a cooking variety. So something that I like to do with the hat and shoes crab, which is like pretty much my favorite thing to do with this variety, is just to take the whole crab apples, dress them in olive oil and salt and pepper, and then roast the whole apple. Like there's a whole baking sheet of these apples being roasted in sort of a savory flavor profile rather than sort of going sweet with it. It's an apple variety whose acidity takes like that salty flavor profile really well. That's the hat and shoes crab. Next up, you have the option to get the Muscadet de Haydenville. That's a bittersweet variety. It actually looks kind of similar in shape and size to the hat and shoes crab. It's like, again, that largish crab. This is a full bittersweet variety. It's a really, really wonderful cider variety. I like to eat them, but it's no playing around, full bittersweet. Really good cider apple. It's found in a parking lot, so it clearly, to me, I've grown it in a lot of marginal places, so it doesn't mind being in like kind of cruddy soil. So if you're a cider maker and you're in sort of like a quasi-urban, suburban, exurban spot where you only have like a little bit of space and the soil might not be that great, I think that Muscadet de Haydenville should do pretty well. Next, but not least, as I was saying, we got Old Fertile. Old Fertile is that one that I was talking about in response to Nick K's question about collecting and pruning wild apple trees for scion production. So that is probably my favorite all-purpose apple that I have gathered up. It's a high bricks apple. It's like one of those freaky like high bricks ones. It was last year, the bricks was like 21 or 20, like anywhere from 20 and a half to 22, depending on the apple. And it's predominantly a sweet. You won't taste much tannin when you eat it fresh. If you make cider, you will taste a little bit of bitterness, but it's predominantly just like a sweet. It's an amazingly delicious, like honey sweet. It's like candy eating Old Fertile. And the tree is called Old Fertile because it's like this humongous old tree with like 4 trunks. The whole canopy is any in fruit yet, but they're just a phenomenal grower. They have a lot of really great vegetative production every year. and it's just like my favorite fruit. And then I have one more variety to offer, which is Pomfret Pink. This is in honor of Tom Burford, who passed away a couple of weeks ago. I don't know how he passed on. He was old, but amid the coronavirus pandemic, I would not be surprised if he perished from that because he was older, definitely someone more at risk. For any of you who don't know who Tom Burford was, he is probably one of the most, if not the most influential pomologist in America up to the time of his. I mean, he'll never lose his influence on the community here, but he was really one of the great minds of apple conservation, apple growing, and sort of had an impact on the cider culture that we have now. So anyhow, Pomfret Pink is a variety that was brought to his attention by a guy from Rhode Island and Vermont who he was friends with Tom Burford, and this variety was a seedling that Tom Burford believed had tremendous commercial potential. It's an all-purpose variety. I would consider it similar to Old Fertile in that way that you can eat it. It's good for blending in cider, but just a very very well-rounded variety, and it's one of Tom Burford's recommendations. So if you are into Tom Burford's work and you want to pour one out for him, then that's on the table as well. And the last variety that I have, I actually said the Pomfret Pink that I just mentioned. That was the last, but I lied. There was one more bag on the table here, and that is Thornton Pearls. This is one that I'm trying to get more people growing. If you consider yourself an intermediate apple grower or advanced apple grower, I would say that this one is for you. I think this is an absolutely phenomenal variety, but it's a little bit slower growing and it's a little less vigorous. So it's going to be planted on a full size vigorous rootstock, so it should be should take off really well. But fair warning that if you want something that's like you can just forget about it, don't go with the Thornton Pearls. This variety is a bittersweet. I think a really elevated cider bittersweet that is from the same population of wild trees as Ed's Winter, as well as this other one that I don't have at the moment called Thornton Brass, but that you may have read about on my blog or whatever. But Thornton Pearls is this. It's a crab. It's like medium size. It's probably about, I don't know, that big. I've got a post about it on my Instagram. You can see pictures of it and everything. What's cool about it is that it's like almost white. It's not yellow so much. It's like when they're on the tree, these apples are almost like white. And some of them, if they get a lot of sunlight, will develop a red blush. But it's like a porcelain apple. It almost looks like a pearl. So it's called Thornton Pearls because it's from the town of Thornton. And it's this like crazy white apple. If some of you may have seen white apples before, but it's not albino. It's just a much more rare expression of the apple genome. So it's beautiful. It's a really, really wonderful cider bittersweet. It's a little bit shy as a tree, as a grower, but I think if any of you are feeling lucky with full-size rootstock, then I would recommend giving it a try. So those are the varieties I have. You can think about it and send me an email if you want. I'm just gonna stay on here and like graft a couple more trees while I'm here. Just long enough that I can get some responses on the chat, and then around 2:15 or so my time. I think there might be a little latency, but around 2:15 I'm gonna sign off and make sure that you guys all know that you can always email me any questions you have. All my people. I want to make sure you get all the information that you were looking for. And if you have any questions, you just send them to me at this email address. You can just reply to one of the like bajillion emails that I sent you trying to get you reconnected on this stream. And yeah, I'm going to do my best to get this shipment of trees out to you guys this week. So I'm looking for a response from everyone. If I don't hear from you, then I won't send your tree out yet because I need to make sure that I have the right variety for you, as well as make sure that you get the right shipping address. I've got billing addresses. I'm assuming that for most of you, that's going to be the same as your shipping address. But just to be careful, people maybe not living in the same place right now due to COVID-19. Some of you might be displaced from your normal residences. So just send me exactly where you want the tree sent. Tell me your desired variety, and we'll get it popping. Nick K with the saddle graft, if you're using those 1/8 inch diameter scions, can you or is there any point to sticking two in the same stock? No, I would not recommend that. With respect to the saddle graft specifically, if you were to slip two in there, should you be able to fit that that many scions in that rootstock? The reason why I would recommend against it is because if that scion, you just don't need that many. If you have good cambium alignment, you're gonna get those buds to take off, but it takes a lot of energy to heal that graft union. So the roots on this wimpy rootstock that is not, it's not like the strongest root system. If it has to put a lot of energy into healing like a more complex graft union, then you're going to get a weaker takeoff, and you're eventually going to thin it out anyway down to one shoot. So by putting two scions in there, you're probably setting yourself up for a slower growing tree out of the nursery. So I would recommend just putting on, one, and when it starts to take off, when the buds start to grow, just pinch off any that look weak. Keep one or two that look really good, but really just be looking to develop one shoot off that one bud of that one scion that you slip in there on that offset saddle graft. Hope that helps. Mark Moskowitz says, Moskowitz, I bet you that's how you say it. Thanks so much. It was very informative, and I'll send a follow-up. Thank you, my man. Craig, thank you too. Hope this all worked out for all of you. So I'll just keep this laptop set here for another minute or two. Just going to be grafting some trees in the meanwhile, and I'll wait to hear from you. Feel free to sign off if you've got what you came for. I see we're down to 12 viewers, so I get it. It's all good. Oh yeah, one last thing. This book, Proceedings from the First Annual Wild and Seedling Pomological Exhibition, that's a mouthful. That's going to be live. We're going to set the pre-order up in about a week and a half when we get the real print out. This was just a proof print, but any of you guys who are interested in some light reading for while you're cooped up at home, this will be a cool book. It's got a lot of different apple varieties in it. It's a proceedings from an event that I held in the fall that I hope maybe one day you all will send me wild apples that I can feature and give you credit for introducing in the next wild pomological exhibition that we'll do in a couple years. Maybe this year if we can get back on track soon. But anyhow, that's that. So thank you, Ian. I will get you an old fertile. I think that's going to be the best one for you. It is a later season apple, but it's worth the wait. Definitely worth the wait. Thanks, Nick. Thanks for all your support. I'm happy to send you a nice tree. It's been real. Thanks for asking such great questions. Stefan, how do you determine if wild trees are good candidates for growing in your orchard? That's a great question, and it's not a straightforward answer. Um, you don't really have any idea before trying it. I think the best way to make those determinations is to set up a nursery for yourself where you can grow out your baby trees, where you can grow out rootstock and trial varieties in a nursery setting, and then move up to the next step. It's a long process of trying to determine which wild varieties might do well in cultivated settings, although that's a big debate that people like Andy Brennan and myself and a lot of other people have been sort of chiming into over the last couple of years to try and figure out um, if and how you can make those determinations. One thing that I would say is it seems logical to me is that when you find a wild apple tree that you really like the fruit of, looking at the context of its growing conditions, like if it's growing in like a drainage ditch on the side of a highway or in a really shady spot, competing with a lot of other trees, these types of things that are really, really different than like a cultivated setting, I think you can more reliably expect a super different outcome between the mother tree and the cultivated setting of that same variety. So when you're trying to determine which varieties are going to be a good fit for your growing system, trying to look at where they're growing. Like, are they growing in a field? Are they growing with a lot of other pressure from other tree species? Um, are they being shaded out at the edge of a forest? Things like that. Those are red flags for me. I'm trying to put a lot of effort into things that look like they're um, gonna their contexts mimic uh, what the cultivated setting that I'm going to put them into might look like a little more, just to have that at least on a fundamental level have some similarities between what you're experiencing when you taste the fruit of that wild tree and what you hope to be creating at your farm or orchard or fruit tree garden or whatever. Um, Hope that makes a little bit of sense, but the best thing you can do is just consider those context clues and then just graft it and try to get fruit off it in a good orchard. And if you for whatever reason are like, dang, this was a waste of time, then you're a grafting pro. You can at least regraft it to another variety or something. So everything that I'm offering here, this is all stuff that's been grown out in nursery and produced really, really interesting fruit, both in the obviously in mother tree settings as well as on top work in other trees and whatnot. So that's my best advice. Hope that helps. Bobby, um, great. Look for a message there. Thank you very much, man. Looks like we still got a few viewers. I appreciate y'all sticking around. I'm gonna give it about 2 more minutes until 2:20 my time here on the East Coast, and then I'm gonna sign off and just get to the grafting soundtrack for the day. I'll have to figure out what that is and just jam out and listen to some stuff. Already getting a couple emails from a couple of you, so I will have your tree preference. So, alrighty.